Right, super, super, super. So I'm working on, I've got a bigger piece of paper here, but I have actually taped with some transparent tape around just a bit bigger than an A4, because that's easier for you to see. But the little one I did last night is an A5, and this is actually the Barholm Artist Watercolour paper, and it's an actual glued pad, so it's quite easy to paint on because it doesn't buckle. It's a strange texture, but it's quite nice. I find doing little studies before I start really help, because you can work out what might be challenging. The other thing I have is a little bit of white gouache, which I might need to do just this little bit of sunrise in the end if I don't save the paper quite well enough. So I'm glad finally, and I've got to remember to make sure it's round this way next week so we don't have all these lovely challenges. Now we're going to start not by wetting the paper. You can draw in your horizon if you want, if you think it's going to help a bit. I'm not going to, because I'm just kind of guesstimate. I don't want it halfway. This is slightly lower, but I'd like to bring it up a little bit. But first of all, we're going to mix our colours, because when you're doing a sky like this and the reflection comes all the way down, so what I'm aiming to do is paint all the way down from top to bottom, bring in the colours wet in wet, and then go back in and paint this horizon. So that hopefully makes sense. So the first thing we're going to do is mix some colours. Now, one of the challenges I had last night was getting, as I say, the blues dark enough. Now I used a palette with pans, and it's much harder to get colour out of them, particularly if you're using student grade paints, which is why I'm using artists' paints tonight, because you find you get the colour just floods so much easier. And because watercolour dries lighter, it is better to go in darker than you think you need, and you'll find it will lighten up quite a bit when it dries. So the first thing I'm going to do is mix my colours, and I have just a plastic mixing palette, but what I like the enamel ones, the China ones, but what I like about this is I've got wells I can mix colours into, because you need to have enough paint ready to go on. So I'm going to look at what colours I need first. So I'm going to take my ultramarine, and I want plenty of colour. Now if you're working with pans, you need to keep dipping your brush into your pans. It often helps to wet them before you start, and scrape your brush off on the side. So I'm probably going to go from ultramarine down through cobalt, but this colour I'm actually going to add in, I want quite a bit of it, I'm going to use some at the bottom as well. I'm going to add in the tiniest bit of burnt sienna, and that's actually alizarin. Can you see how purple that goes? So that's a good colour for down the bottom. I'm going to put a little bit more burnt sienna in it. It makes it a little bit grayer. Now, because I've taped around my paper, I can try these colours out on the side. I think you can see that, yes. So I can try these colours out on the side. So that's a nice colour. So plenty of that. I'm going to go in with some cobalt for my sky as well. And again, it's a bit too blue, so I'm going to add in the teeniest amount of burnt sienna. It just dulls it a tiny bit, not much. There we are. And that, I think I probably need a bit more than that even. Now don't forget, you're going to be working wet into wet, so your paper will be wet, so you can afford to have a fairly dry, pasty colour, if that makes sense. Not, you know, thick, creamy, not too runny. And I can dip straight back into the cobalt if I need to. So my next colour is the clouds. Now the other challenge with this picture is to manage to do the lovely orangey yellow glow without turning it green where it meets the blue. So one way of doing that is to sort of what we call couch, where you have more of an orange next to the blue, which should make a grey, and keep your yellow separate. But this is quite a yellowy, quite an orangey yellow anyway. So I'm going to have some of that down here. That is just beautiful, isn't it? We'll see what that looks like. Now I've got 2 pots of water and obviously a tissue, but I've got 2 pots of water so that I can wash my brush out in one and then dip it in the next one so that it doesn't get doily. Now my grey clouds are actually going to be a mix of this. So I'm going to go back to my ultramarine and I'm going to put quite a bit in here. And then I'm going to do my ultramarine. It's giving me a really, really dark purpley colour, which is too purple. So the way I make, I've got let that less purple, is put some more blue in, a bit more blue. Now that is very purple. And I want it a little bit more grey, so I need to put a little bit of yellow in it, believe it or not. And I don't necessarily want it to be exactly the same colour as in the picture. Yeah, I think that's too purpley. I want to go a bit more blue again. And this is the thing when you're mixing up these colours, I'm putting cobalt into it this time. You push it too far one way, you have to take it back another. That's looking a bit better. I think that's quite a nice cloud colour. Yes, you can see that. What else do I need? Most of those colours are going to be coming down the page. The other one I want, I've got this Thalo here. And this is, actually it's Prussian I've got here. This is this really dark blue, which is going to be lovely for down here. And we're going to be doing some glazing. So we're going to be painting some deeper layers over the top down here to get some of these nice gradients. And then all the dark stuff is going on later. Right, so you're all with me so far? Excellent. So I'll let you mix your colours for a few minutes. I think we can see the page okay. And then we are going to start wetting our page. So for this you do need clean water. Now, for ease, I might just pencil in. In fact, I'm going to put my horizon line in with a pen, a waterproof pen, because it's going to go dark. It's going to be dark anyway. And I had my pen earlier because I showed it to you. There it is, it's hidden under here. And what I'm going to use for this, I'm just going to draw across here. So because this is waterproof, I don't know if this is going to be straight or I can't really see if I'm at an angle. Because this is a waterproof pen, it means when I paint over it with the very dark, it won't smudge. Smudge that a bit there, look. See if I can lift that out. That is, the thing about painting live is there's no hiding, is there? There we are. If you're using reasonably good paper, you can lift colours out. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to make the whole thing wet. So lots and lots of water. I might leave a little bit for some clouds. Well, that has run. Obviously wasn't my waterproof pen, was it? Silly Billy. Okay, I can get away with that. So I'm going in with my sky colour. Some of this cobalt. Make it a bit warmer. And I'm not, I want to work quite quickly. I actually probably need, can you see how light that looks? That's going to dry really, really light. So I'm going back in with a bit more blue. Got to work really fast, because if you don't, you'll begin to get, what do you call it? Rumbacks. I'm also slightly tilted. This is also slightly tilted. So I'm going to now put in some of my, this lovely yellow. I'm going to try and keep it away a little bit. I do want it to soften. I want some clean parts. Now, my cloud colour, while it's still wet, and we can, of course, we can go back over this as well later. Right. I'm going to wait for that to dry just a little bit and go back in with a darker cloud cover, but I'm going to keep working down. So I have this, which was originally for my sky. I'm going to mix a little bit of this Thalo or Prussian, because it's a cool colour. It will make it look like it's a bit further away. What I do need to think about is, I want it to get lighter as it comes down here, and I'm going to lift it out where the sun comes down and I've painted over it. Down the bottom, I'm coming back in with a lot of this very, very dark, and even some of this cloud colour down here. I want it to be very, very dark. You've got to work fast. But you can see where you've got a mix of the colours. It's giving you a little bit of movement in the water. And even now, I think I can go in with some quite thick pigment down here. In fact, this water's probably all a bit darker. Now, I'm going to use my brush. It needs to be clean, and I'm going to squeeze it out, clean it out, squeeze it, and then I'm going to pick up here and wipe that colour out. Again, if you're using good paper, it's much easier to do this. There we are. And I'm going to put a little bit of that orange in here. And I'm just going to drag this down so it joins it a little bit. Oh, I mustn't work it anymore. That's it. That's it. Now I need to leave it alone, she says as she carries on. Right, but that is, I'm leaving that. Now this needs to dry, but can you see where the clouds can be darker? So I've used up quite a bit of my cloud colour. So I'm going to mix up a bit more. So a bit of ultramarine, a bit of alizarin, tiny bit of burnt sienna. It's given me a really dark, deep purple, so I want that to be more blue, so let's put some cobalt in. Right, let's try this. It's still quite purpley, but I think that's fine. There we are. I think that's kind of okay. Just come in again here, it can be a bit darker. Now the thing is with watercolour, your brush is either, it acts like a sponge, so it's either picking water up or it's putting water down. So the more you practice, and I do believe in practicing paintings rather than just playing around. So I'm going to get my little brush, I'm going to clean it off so it's damp, and I'm going to just see if I can pull out some of these lighter bits down here. You have to clean it off. Just a little bit of movement in the water. We're going to be glazing over this anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much what this looks like at this point. Might be quite a good time to play. So just some little lines. Don't forget that you won't be able to see them the further away they go. But we can do this while it's giving it a chance to dry out. The better quality your paper, the easier this is to do. And this isn't the best quality paper, but it seems to be kind of working. And then when you glaze over again, you'll find your darks will go darker and your lights will kind of stay in position. I'm not doing much more than that because I just want a little bit of movement on the water. Right, I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes. I will probably use my hairdryer, but I know you probably don't all have one, but if you want to run away and find one, feel free. Looking for the thumbs up. Yeah, they're watercolours, Sweet Devil 721. Yeah, these are watercolour paints. With all their lovely challenges. I mean, people tend, whenever they decide they want to start doing art, a lot of people go for watercolours. And I actually think it's the hardest medium to master because it is a bit of a law unto itself. So you can see my paper's buckled a little bit. That's only to be expected. it will dry out. When it dries out, it will flatten. But if you don't want any buckling in your paper, you need to use really heavyweight, good quality watercolour paper that's like 300 pounds, or 300 GSM, sorry, 140 pounds. And you probably need to stretch it, which means you soak your page in water for a few minutes, and then you put it on your board, and then you tape it down, or you tack it or staple it, and then when it dries completely flat. It's not something I was taught to do, but I think it's something I will start to do a bit more of, actually. So where we've got this really wide orange bit that looks a bit strange at the moment, we will be coming in with another glaze of blue over this. So I am going to dry it, so I will turn off my microphone, and then I've got to remember to turn my microphone back on. Right, so while mine's nearly dry, so while yours is drying, does anyone have any questions or comments? I don't, I'm filming on a phone at the moment, and it does normally work, but it gives you a very small image on YouTube. So what I might even consider doing in future is actually recording the whole thing first and then playing it as a live, because then I can record it on a decent camera, so you'll have a full screen. Any questions? Okay, cool. So we're going to go in now and do some of this very dark, and then we can get a balance, and then we'll start to glaze a bit more down here. If you've got sky and you're not very happy with it, again, you can use the lifting out method. So I've got a big brush here, and you can create some softer bits if you want to. So I'll let you play with that later if you feel you need to. So I want to do this part along here, and as I said last week, if you stick to just the few colours that you've got out, you'll find everything should end up looking quite harmonious. So although this looks like black, I don't particularly want it to be black. So you can use Payne's Grey if you've got it, but I would rather try to mix something like a Payne's Grey. So to do that, I'm going to use my ultramarine. And the reason I ended up putting the burnt umber in was because last week I found I couldn't get quite dark enough. There we are, so that's actually, it's much easier to get really, really dark colours with professional quality paints. If you're using the student ones, it is much harder. Now, because I've already got my line in there, I can put my straight horizon in, and then just if it's not dark enough this time, don't want it to look all too even. If it's not dark enough this time, I can come back in over the top. And with my little one I did last night, I went over it several times. Straight across my line. Still not quite dark enough, I don't think, and I don't want my trees to be as high as the ones in the photograph, because I like this light. Right, so that needs to be a bit darker. So I'm going back for some colour, and I'm actually putting very little. You can vary the colour as it goes along, so this is a bit more of a blue. I'm putting very little water in this. And it is almost black, isn't it? So I probably will need to come in and do a bit more, take it even darker. And I've gone over the line, so I'm going to have to lift that out. Just with a damp, clean brush. There we are. I'm going to go back in with a little bit darker, and this time I'm going to add in a little bit of alizarin as well to make it a little bit warmer. I don't know if you can see, but that's now gone completely maroon. The thing is, once you learn to mix your colours, it's the same regardless of what medium you're using. Acrylics behave differently because they dry darker. So that's a real purple, but I quite like that. It's a little bit warmer. And I'm leaving a little bit of the lighter colour showing out the back, so it looks like there's two layers. And you can change the colours up and down as you go along. So I could put in a little bit of yellow into this mix as well, which is going to give me a really dark, like greeny brown colour. But it's as dark, it's still the right sort of value. It's very, very dark. And then over here I'm gonna add in a little bit more blue. Take it back to that very, very dark blue. See, that's a proper grey, isn't it? Water that down. Yeah. If it goes too much one way with one colour, you add in its opposite to pull it back. Right, I think a question's just popped up. Give me a minute. Right. Oh, thank you, Brendan. You obviously weren't here earlier to see all my trials and tribulations of tech challenge, but thank you. Okay, I think that looks kind of how I want it to look. You can cheat and use a ruler to do this. There are some little trees in the background. Now I'm going to try and see if I can put a little bit of dry brush tree in. So what I mean by that is I want to just touch, there we are, just touch a little bit at the back. Just to make it look like there's some trees in the background. So I've got very quite dry paint. I wipe it all off, most of it off, and then just wiggle it gently. If you've got to have paper with tooth in it, if you're using a smooth paper, it's much harder to do. There we are, it looks like there's some trees in the background. I quite like that effect. Okay, I'm going to let you do that, and I'm going to sit and wait for a little while. How are we all doing? So you can see from the image that still my sky's not far off, but the water at the front needs to be a lot darker. And it is quite nice to have the top and the bottom foregrounds darker. So I'd like to make that a bit darker. Definitely this is going to go darker. And then we've got to glaze some of this across the middle, across that sunshine, because it's too bright at the moment. So, where do we go next? I'm going to put another wash across the top of my sky. And I've used up most of the colours that I mixed up initially, but because I've only got a few on the palette, it's not difficult to know what I need to do. So I'm going in with some ultramarine and a teeny tiny little bit of burnt sienna. It just greys it there. And then I'm going to just put a bit of water across that sky again. And I might not have done it all, but it doesn't really matter. As long as it kind of flows. There we are, because it's already wet, that should kind of work. And that's it. I don't want to fiddle, because if I fiddle, I'm going to get runbacks. Okay. Now, where this has started to dry, can you see I've got a few marks? I've got a few little runbacks, so I should be able to just soften those off a little bit. There we are. Okay. So the next thing is to start glazing this bottom bit, which should be more or less dry. Oh, Autumn was painting along, had a power cut. Okay, catch up, yeah, on the recording. Super. Right. So down here, well, first of all, I want to glaze up the top. I quite like this orangey accident, but that is part of the joy of watercolours. Happy little accidents. So I'm going to glaze in over my sea. Now I've got this cloud colour, which when dilute might be quite a nice colour to go over the sea with. I'm just going to have a look. Yeah, it's not the right colour. I'm going to go with my blue. Let's go back with my blue. I'm going to put some of, I've got 3 blues here going on. Oh my God. I've got all 3 blues in that, and then I'm going to add in a tiny little bit of, and I say tiny, I mean tiny, burnt sienna. So this is quite a washy glaze, quite a thin glaze, and I just want to see how it sits. That's it, I'm dry brushing it into that some. So I'm starting off with it wetter out at the edges, and then as I get closer, it's running out on my brush, which means I can then get that dry brush effect so it looks like dappled light. Okay. That's working. A bit more water. It's going to get darker as it comes down, don't forget. And try and keep your hand steady because these ripples will be horizontal. As I come down closer to here, I want it kind of a little bit more purpley, so I'm adding in some of my cloud colour to right down here. Can you see how dark that's going? And I'm not putting it all over, because there's some movement that you can see in the water down here. Again, put a little bit of my water in there, and I'm going to come in down the bottom. I'm not painting all over it, but these kind of lines won't go all the way back. So on the other side I work my way down, this side I'm working my way up. And down here it's actually going to kind of disappear. More water, it will look a little bit more obvious as they get closer down here. Now, don't you try this because it might go horribly wrong, but I'm going to see if I can put a little bit of orange. You can see up here there's a little bit of orange. I'm going to see if I can add that. It might go, as I say, it might go horribly wrong, but let's see. Kind of all right, not fantastic. It will give me a bit of kind of definition. So I'm mixing up my colours again. The purple, I've got a bit of Thalo and a little bit more of my cobalt. Really is just playing, isn't it, and seeing what happens. So that's quite washy, and I'm going to come back in over here. Don't want to cover it all up, but because I put it over the blue, it doesn't have the luminosity that this one does. Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily suggest doing that because it didn't really work how I'd hoped. But hey, that's one of the reasons for painting along, is we learn by everybody else's mistakes, mine included. So this is where you've got free rein to, they probably wouldn't show that much up there, to paint your foreground darker and darker. So my ultramarine, actually I'm going to put a bit of Thalo in there and a little bit of alizarin, so that makes this really deep purple down here. Make sure it's all mixed or you'll get big splodges of red. Right, let's see. Yeah, that's really good down here, isn't it? So this is really very similar to the colour, well it probably is the same as the colour that we made for the sky. For the clouds this one was. That's looking better. I'm going to try and glaze that in still a bit more up here. I might try and paint that out actually, because that it's alright, it's alright. Got a bit of Thalo I'm going to go in over here with, because we've got these lovely reeds poking through, and it gets a little bit darker in here, doesn't it? So your marks will get smaller as they go further away. Right, that's beginning to look a little bit better. Don't want them to look too uniform, which is why the dry brushing kind of works. I've just got some clean brush here. Just put some water on. Just to soften some of those. Yes, I think that's kind of a bit better. You've actually got a little bit of an orangey glow here, so whereas I put that on and then decided I didn't like it, I actually am going to put a little bit on this side, just in here a little bit. That's all right, I think. So I'm looking at it on the screen. I don't like this bit here, so I'm going to use a clean brush and I'm going to try and lift some of this out, or merge it in, whichever I'm trying to do. Could actually try lifting it out. Yeah. Again, the better your paper, the more you can resolve problems and fiddle with things. There we go. Oh, she's just done the same thing again. That's okay. still think that's a bit better than it was. Okay, so we are on to the last bits. How are you all doing? So when we finish, it'd be fantastic if you could join me on my Skool community. The link is in my bio and I think I posted it at the beginning of the chat. But we can have coffee sessions in there, live chats like you do on Zoom. And I'm going to be doing some gouache and different things in there, and top tips on how I could improve this with gouache once it's finished. So it's free to join. I've only got 20 people in there at the moment, but I hope to make it a real hub for questions and answers and sharing artwork and a real nice little community. So it's SKOOL, Julie Ford Art, but as I say, the link is in my bio and at the top of the chat feed. So do come and join me, and I can get to know you, because you can't chat like that on YouTube. Right, so Pam's concentrating. That's cool. So I'm just going to show you how I'm going to tackle these reeds, and then put the little, there's a little boy, isn't there? So I've still got some of this colour left, so I want it fairly dry, and I want to try and do a bit of dry brushing. So I'm mixing, I am actually mixing up, I don't think it's dry enough, so I've had to mix up a bit more. That's now gone lovely and red. Let's take that down there. I think that might be, oh, I don't know. Right, so I'm going to try and dry brush. There's some over here. That's actually all right. That's actually worked quite well. There's some just here. And these are just sort of the reed beds. Just again, using some thick paint to dry brush. Probably overdid it there, but never mind. Oh, I don't know, that looks all right, I think. Now these teeny tiny little whiskery bits of grass, I'm going to try and paint them in with that same colour. Tiny little marks, and they will actually all be reflected, won't they? So and you can still paint over this once you've done it, even if you think you want to go a little bit darker. So try not to have, in fact it's probably better to hold your brush right at the end so you don't have too much control. A few little ones down here as well. It's obviously low tide. have to say that's why I really like gouache, because it is still watercolour, but it's opaque, and it does mean that if you do something and you really aren't very happy about it, you can easily go back in and change it. And I love the fact that gouache is matte and it's water-based, because I love painting in oils and soft pastels, but they're really not very easy if you want to go and paint while you're on holiday. The number of holidays I've been on and never ever got anything, taken all my kit, and then it's just never ever come out of the car, because you know, you need, if you're going to paint in oils, you really need at least two hours, whereas gouache, it looks like oils, but it's water-based, so it's clean, it dries immediately, you're not trying to walk home with wet canvases. I'm just putting in some little ripply bits here, still with the same colour. Be bigger nearer to you they are, be a bit taller. Probably these ones are a bit too big, but that's fine. Quite a few of them. Let's see. Adding in some more of these kind of ripples with this very dark purple wash, because once that goes over this colour, it kind of loses a lot of its purpleness. There we are. They say less is more. Sometimes you just can't stop yourself. But it adds depth. If you go back in over some of these, it adds some depth because you're laying colours over colours. I'm going to take this little bit out because I think it pulls the eye too much. And I think I'm going to call that done. She says, hold on, maybe not quite, maybe not quite. There we are. I think I'm going to call that done. So I hope you enjoyed it. I am so sorry about all the technical issues at the beginning. That will all be cut out of the live recording. Thank you for your patience, and I will be back here next week, same time. But please do come and join me on Skool so we can have a chat, get to know each other properly, and I can ask you, you know, what you'd like out of the group. All right, everybody, thank you. Cheers, bye.